Welcome to Rethink Growth. Thank you for joining us. I'm watching our attendees begin to come in, and so we'll talk a little bit about why Rethink Growth is so important at this time. And then I'll introduce you to the folks who are going to be talking to you and sharing with you their stories about blue ocean strategy. As you're coming in, I'll tell you a little bit about why Rethink Growth is so timely. And those who come a little bit later will keep talking about it as we go through our speakers. I'm a corporate anthropologist. I'm also a blue ocean strategist. I had the pleasure of meeting Renee Mabon in the elevator at the Harvard Club, just after her book came out, just about 20 years ago. Somebody said to me not long ago, blue ocean is old. I said, oh no, it's a state of mind, and you never stop seeing blue oceans once you embrace the whole approach. And so what we're going to be doing is really understanding how today, in the markets that we're in, we're going to have some challenging times growing if we don't begin to see, feel, and think in new ways. Now, the attendees are growing fast. Let me spend a moment introducing you to the panel that we have here so that you know what's coming today and why this is going to be a very exciting conversation. The context. I started to put together a Rethink Growth because I'm getting lots of inquiries from people about, how do we regrow when times are changing? Maybe the old, as Peter Drucker said, it's not the turbulence. It's really just trying to solve it with old problems with old solutions, and it doesn't work. So I've brought together 3 wonderful companies, 4 people, who are going to talk to you about their own experiences. Max Teblitsky here is our gentleman for the day, who's going to talk to us about the International Fresh Produce Association. Now, Max is really a believer in blue oceans and found us through a mutual colleague. She had also been a blue ocean client of ours. And what he was interested in was how could he rethink international fresh produce. I'll tell you his bio when we begin, but he's here to tell you about a process that helped him see, feel, and think in new ways about what his members really needed. Then I have Danielle Finkelstein and Time Sullivan, our duet. And they decided to leave corporate life to go off and do something purposeful. They're also cousins, but they didn't know at the time they both had burned out in their corporate careers. So it was time to really rethink their own lives, grow better, and really begin to do something purposeful. What did they focus on? You might not believe it, but creating sustainable sanitary products for women. Sounds like an interesting market, perhaps a red ocean, highly saturated, with lots of product on the shelves, and they're shaking their heads. So they're going to tell you how their venture into something purposeful needed a pivot. And that pivot opened to blue ocean. They created a market. And that's the essential part of blue ocean thinking, creating a market. And then Eileen Rosenthal is a wonderful woman who's doing remarkable things through her program, Footsteps to Brilliance. And we'll be putting their websites up on the chat. But Eileen has been discovering all kinds of ways to bring technology, storytelling, gamification, and all kinds of interesting, innovative ways to help kids from 3 to 8 learn about things in new ways. She has a new program out on financial literacy for elementary school kids. And then we're going to focus on that today because we talk about an unmet need, a big vacuum. Nobody's solving it. She doesn't have to compete, but now she's going to create something new. And then Helen McBride is here to help us navigate all the way through. So as we go through today, what I'd like you to do is begin to think about questions you'd like to ask, and then we will assemble them. We'll answer some of them as we go along. If not, at the end, we'll pull them all together and push them out to the folks that you need answers from. So I think we're going to go and begin. What do you think, Helen?
Excited to hear. Excited to hear about everybody's business today.
Now, with that in mind, let's go and begin to look at what we are going to be talking about. I want to give you a snippet of blue ocean. So as you listen to Max, you're going to begin to say to yourself, now I understand. Blue ocean believes in a couple of things. Michael Porter's classic strategy believed in competing. Pick out your space in the market, do a better job of efficiencies and pricing, get your salespeople to sell better, and compete. When there are lots of people buying, that's a problem. Today, may be a real problem. Instead, Blue Ocean thinks about creating a market. Forget about competition. Think about creation. And add value innovatively, not incrementally. So, may I introduce you to Max Teplitsky? Max, I'm going to finish his bio. He leads the IFPA's initiatives in sustainability, regenerative and climate smart agriculture, ag tech innovation, and food safety. He's Chief Science Officer at the International Fresh Produce Association. Now, you may not pay much attention, but when you hear about a bad infection or some kind of disease or a virus or something catching on to cucumbers, that's a Max problem. And he has to go out there and educate the farmers so that they can be safe. But he's also really interested in helping people think about how to support sustainable packaging and climate smart farming. How do we take things through a real circular economy? Max, thank you for joining me today. Pleasure to have you here.
Well, thank you, Andy. This is a great opportunity, and I'm so excited to be here.
Please tell the audience about you and IFPA. What was the problem that we needed to solve? And then we
Mhm.
can talk about how the tools helped you see it through a fresh lens. Please.
Yeah, IFPA, International Fresh Produce Association, is the largest trade association that represents the entire fresh produce supply chain. So our members are from seed and fertilizer companies all the way to quick serve restaurants and retailers. So everybody from seed companies to Walmart. And our sole mission is to grow a healthier world, increase consumption of fresh produce. It seems like it should be a no-brainer. Fresh produce, fruits and vegetables, and floral um, should be on half our plate, and fresh cut flowers should be on every table. But turns out that it's not that obvious to consumers as they make these decisions to buy or not to buy at a point of sale. And the challenges are many, and the purpose of our trade association is to make sure that we remove barriers for consumers to buy the healthiest, most sustainable food on the shelf, and also decorate their homes with fresh cut flowers, but also remove barriers for producers to grow sustainably, decrease their costs, and promote sustainability and food safety in their operations. So that's why we exist. And IFP resulted from a recent merger of three organizations. Um, and collectively, we have over 140 years of history. And as you know, during COVID, a lot of nonprofits rethought their business business plans and opportunities. So soon after COVID, IFP was formed from the merger of legacy associations. And the reason we've reached out to Andy is because we're specifically looking at the food safety space. And we're trying to figure out where IFP could be most impactful in advancing food safety, both for the consumers and for our growers. And if you think about it, in many ways, it is a red ocean. So if you look at the 16 lines of business in the food safety department, we had education, we had boots on the ground support, we have technology development and technology sort of education. We had trainer programs. Oh, by the way, we're in 54 countries around the world. So how can we scale and also provide service to the members that are as diverse as, giant retailers, but also fairly small growing operations in the field? And then, we've reached out to Andy. Well, first of all, before we reached out to Andy, we've done some homework. So we looked at the performance of our key lines of business, website hits, how many people, how many members accessed certain guidance documents that we have on the website, how often our email newsletters get open, how do our different trainings perform in terms of the wait list and revenue generation. So we had that data. And we are an organization that are data driven. So we collect as much data about ourselves as we possibly can. And we're also very proactive, I would say aggressive, with soliciting feedback from the members and also from the consumers about the industry. So we had done the homework, and then we reached out to Andy, and we really tried to understand the um, competitive landscape. Because if you think about it, who else exists in this ecosystem? We have university extension services that are really good with on the ground, boots on the ground operations and hands-on support for the smaller and medium-sized growers. We have other regional trade associations that are focusing on the growers in their regions, mostly reaching out to the smaller growers. Then we have consultants that are working in a space and they're providing support one-on-one when there is a crisis. And we also have um, companies that provide certification services. So they're also, in a way, consultants as they provide service to the members. So Andy took it upon herself to interview some of our key members, and we also made a decision to reach out to current members, to members who stepped away from the association, and members who decreased their engagement with the association. We also asked Andy to talk to our competitors and let them share what they think about us, which, sometimes it's an eye-opening but well-intended conversation. And then with the totality of all of that input, it became really clear where IFPA can make a difference. As the global organization, members and frankly the consumers depend on us, IFPA, to set the global tone for food safety conversations. Food safety is only going to work if everybody's on the same page, if the same food safety rules apply in Mexico, Canada, Europe, and the rest of the world, because the world is increasingly connected and we can have different food safety standards in different parts of the world. We also became very clear on the fact that members depend on us to interact with the regulators in DC, whatever DC means, in the next 3 years. But there has to be a true collaboration between grower shippers, retailers, and also with the government regulators. The regulations only work if they're meaningful and workable. And, it's our responsibility to communicate with the regulators, but also translate what regulators are hearing and deciding to the grower shippers so that we can put in place the best practices that work for our members. And conversely, when regulators are investigating an outbreak, sometimes the information they truly need only exists within the industry. And, it's up to organizations like ours to be able to set up these transparent channels of communication so that we can investigate outbreaks fast and remove problematic products from the shelves immediately. And on that, IFPA actually led several traceability initiatives. So when outbreaks or recalls occur now, problematic products are removed from the shelves, within hours. And we're talking about fresh produce specifically. This industry is the pioneer of traceability. And the next step after we went through the eliminate, I always forget them, eliminate
Reduce, raise, and create.
that.
Yes. And we had to
Um,
change. So what are we going to change? But Max, just pause for one moment. Because two things that sort of illustrate the blue ocean methodology, just to set the stage for what they came up with, because I do think it was really quite innovative. Their members and competitors were talking about the things that they thought they were doing. They wanted communication, but they weren't reading the newsletters. They wanted training, but only 100 people were involved in it. They were doing the things that they thought that's the way it's done. But what they found was that wasn't the way it needed to be done. And it wasn't that the members or the non-members or the former members had a way of telling them how to do it, but they knew the need was real, it was unmet, and Blue Ocean is around unmet needs. And I want to emphasize that because for the audience who's listening or watching, it's important to understand that your customers tell you things. Can you hear them? And if you can't hear them, you're going to lose them because they're going to find another solution. And that became sort of the critical part of what Max led to, which is after we did our strategy canvas, the canvas opened up. Oh my goodness, we look just like them, but we're not very effective. So the methodology in Blue Ocean is a four action framework. What are we going to eliminate, reduce, raise, and create? And now I'll let Max tell you what we created because it's just dramatically different than another newsletter. Please, Max. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Indy. Think when we have 3,000 member companies, and each company has anywhere between 50 and 50,000 employees, how do we reach out to them with a staff of about 90 full-time staffers? Um, the answer is leveraging AI. And I know there is a lot of concern right now about what AI could do, but we were very clear, and the board, as a nonprofit, we're governed by the board, and the board was also very clear that we're going to leverage AI to provide this personalized member experience. And I'm excited to tell you that we've rolled out our own intelligence engine, and it could be accessed from our website. And it works very similar to some of the AI agents that you're currently using. Only the difference is that we gated it only to the data that we absolutely trust. And these data are point of sale data, for example, that are, very clear. We are also including data of consumer surveys that we are generating ourselves, and the data from USDA on imports, exports, and farm gate. And now we're starting to add some of the food safety data into that engine as well. So the utility of that engine is that anybody, any member can go to it and ask a question. I would like to start growing rutabagas, and I want to market rutabagas. So this is my blue ocean idea, right? And the engine can actually provide you data-driven feedback on, you know, here's how much rutabagas are sold and in what region, and organic versus conventional. And then if you're truly going to double down on rutabagas as your business model, so consumers are thinking about these key considerations. And by the way, here's how I suggest that you market them as a part of the, menu selection for holidays. So that's what an investment in AI could do. And I got to tell you, the hardest part was to teach it not to go to Reddit. But once we figured out how to keep it away from Reddit, it became a tool that our members are now leveraging quite a lot. And then on training, which was another opportunity for using AI, because training is hard and it's time consuming. And sometimes what you want to hear is only 20 minutes of a 3 hour or 4 hour presentation. So, and yes, we need to understand the context, but also we're talking, we're training adults who already have significant education, but also different levels in the company. You would provide very different food safety training to a foreman of the harvesting crew versus the accounting team in the back office that are getting ready for the audit. So using AI, we can now get these 5-minute food safety invocations for the harvesting crew, just to remind them that, here are the 5 key points that you need to pay attention to as you're harvesting rutabagas versus 15 considerations for the back of the office team that prepares for the audit. So leveraging AI was one of the key sort of technological inputs that we're going to leverage, but also what AI cannot substitute for is establishing relationships with the decision maker, with the regulators, and using AI to take away some of the more routine tasks, freed up our staff and creativity to be more visible and more interactive in the policy space. So I would encourage all of you who are IFP members to check out our intelligence engine on our website. And
But
the
think about
the
it like
rest of y'all,
Max
don't
said.
be afraid of leveraging AI for your tool, for your expansion of the toolbox.
And I can't emphasize it enough. Don't be afraid. because the opportunities of change give you vehicles to satisfy your members in ways that will astound them with ease and speed. And those are two very important topics, and they came from there. Max will be here at the end for any questions, and I have a hunch he will have many because it isn't simple to go and change the way we do things. And all too often, that's not the way we do them, becomes an impediment to growth. And today, his organization is growing with all new ways of doing what they need to for their members. Max, thank you so much. Let me go on to Danielle and time. Um, Cousins and co-founders of Unicorn in every stall. Danielle Finkelstein and Time Sullivan lived decades in corporate America with brands like Coca-Cola and Pepsi and Nestle and Kate Spade and Coach, and they wanted to launch a company with purpose. Now, I love them, and I've done podcasts with Max and Danielle and Time and Eileen because I love to share their story. What began as a bold pivot has become a movement, and I want you to tell the audience about how to think about your ideas going this way, and then turn back and go that way and say, no, I'm missing the opportunity. There's an unmet need, but not where I thought it was. I don't know, ladies, who's going to begin? Tell us your stories.
So we're super excited, Andy. We absolutely adore you, and the whole concept of blue ocean is something that we have embraced in many ways. So to be able to be part of this group and to talk about what we're doing is incredible. So thank you. So what we're doing, we're changing women's lives by placing period products in every bathroom stall. It's super simple. When you really talk about, I
Forgive me
love.
for laughing. It is, but it wasn't done.
No, it wasn't. But really, at the end of the day, it's really simple. And, I think the big part is when you think about just the simplicity of toilet paper being in every single bathroom, anywhere you go, you always know that there will be toilet paper. What we had to do, and I love Max, your comment before, was removing the barriers. We had to look at the space differently. We had to dissect it because what had been done, and I'm going to use a phrase that most what was there, if there were period products, is that people were putting lipstick on a pig. They were putting it out in the common area. And when there was innovation and there wasn't evolving, it was just maybe, okay, I'm going to give you still a better product, but it's still out in the common area. It is not actually where women need it. And so what we had to really do and set down as a team was, what are the barriers that we need to remove that make it easier for the end user, the woman who is using it? But really, the person that we discovered that we needed to have as our number one advocate was the janitorial team, the facility teams, the real estate teams. We had to really partner up with them and understand what were their pain points. And that became extremely important, is really, really being able to break that down and understand what those barriers were. And as soon as we did, that is where the business really took off. We were able to really be able to have these conversations with folks to say, okay, because it's really simple. I mean, our dispenser, it is peel and stick and it sticks on the wall. It is a stainless steel dispenser. It's got a tampon and pad, two cartridges that go slide in right now. Yes, it's IP, it's all of those things, but we had to make sure that the folks who really were going to see the change and how this was actually going to impact women's lives, that it had to be simple. And that was really one of the biggest pieces that we did to really be able to push our business to the next level from where it had been before.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Time.
I just wanted to add, there's a word, blue ocean. We love that because when we first started with a retail product on the shelf, we weren't changing anybody's life or making the impact that we had set out to do. And it was really, listening to our customers say, don't you have a way to dispense this? Can you make it easy? And by the way, if we're going to buy products, we would like to buy products that women actually want to use. And the word that's come up recently, it's an iteration. If you can take an idea, it's no different than how, Uber iterated how we had transportation and Airbnb has iterated, how we stay away from home. This is an iteration of something that existed, but it was very clunky. It was very heavy. It was not simple in any way. It had not been innovated. And really what happened and changed everything is when the blue ocean was when we brought men into the conversation as allies. And, Danielle will tell you how many times we've said it. Have you ever walked around with toilet paper? And they go, that's insane. And once we had that conversation, it really clicked. And truly, because there's a lot of men that work in facilities and real estate and building owners, they're like, yeah, I've got, a wife, daughters, whatever. That makes complete sense. And it was very easy to adopt once I realized, so wait a minute, so I don't have to buy this expensive machine. I don't have to use tools. You have a partnership with 3M. It peels and sticks and it fits in my class A. I mean, there are buildings that weren't putting anything in because it didn't fit in with the aesthetic. So, and it was expensive and it was clunky and it was, everybody cares about labor and waste. This is so simple to install. It's so simple. There's not that excess packaging. They're organic. It's all the things, but it's one of those things that when people see it and hear it, first of all, they can't
They
unsee
can't think
it.
it. Mhm.
And secondly, they go, "Oh my God, this is so like why didn't this ever happen before?" And it's truly everything you say. Like you truly have to just look at things, not accept things how they always have been.
Yeah.
That's how you make real change in the world.
And I love this fresh lens. You couldn't be a better illustration. Talk about rethinking growth. I mean, it opened a whole new market. Nobody was there. It wasn't as if you were disrupting a market. It wasn't as if you were taking it away from a competitor. You weren't competing. You were creating it. And it wasn't that hard. So you say to yourself, how come no one else? Well,
It was kind of hard.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was
just,
hard.
just a little bit, just a tiny
well,
little bit.
I
Yeah.
want you to talk a little bit about your intrusive marketing because it is hard. Because quite frankly, nobody's walking around saying, I really have to do this. I have to do it for my wife or my daughters. Nobody says anything. It's not a pain point. They don't wake up in the middle of the night saying, oh my God, I didn't do it. But you did some intrusive marketing. Tell us about how being a unicorn helped you.
I love that are asking this question because, I think for us, what we recognized is that this is a taboo conversation. Nobody wants to be talking about periods. Nobody wants to be talking about poop. Like there's very like there are topics that people don't want to be talking about. But this is a basic need. This is the thing that actually does need. So when we were sitting down with our creative strategy team, it really came down to like if we had just come up with like a common name or whatever it was or blah 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 period line, like it becomes needle across a record. And this allowed us to actually have an identity behind us. And yes, I have a little bit of an obsession of a
Big obsession.
like late in life obsession with unicorns. And so when our creative team actually asked us, we all agreed that this was actually the right direction because it gives an identity to what this is. It's similar to like the Charmin bear. You really think about when there are certain icons and mascots that you can put along to something. It takes the ick out of it.
Yep.
And that was a part for us that we needed to sort of remove that part. But then also, there's magic to unicorn. So when you really do think about the word itself, like, yes, we would love to be $1 billion company, but like beyond that, it's magical. They're unique, they're powerful, they're feminine, all of those things. And when you actually say there needs to be a unicorn in every single stall, that is memorable. And that was really the piece to us is that we had to come up with something that was going to be memorable, that would stick in people's minds. And, we are now like people say, like, oh, there's the
There's
unicorn.
the
There's the unicorn.
which is
Oh,
so much better than there's the tampon ladies.
yes. Oh, it is. Yes. So it has been one of those things that we have embraced and really do share. I mean, Andy, I know we spoke to you about just you were thinking about something with one of your clients as well. Is just like look at it through a different lens because it is a serious conversation. What we're doing is we're creating systemic change. At the end of the day, what our goal is that we will create systemic change, and that period products will be in every single bathroom away from home. But you've got to shift on how that dialogue because sometimes when you're embracing something this large, it can sometimes become like Charlie Brown's teacher. Like people are like, wah, wah, wah. Like, okay, we hear you. And this just allows to also just bring in a little bit of levity. I think the big part for both me and Thyme is we left major corporate jobs and we were very successful executives. And if we weren't going to have fun while we were doing this, we might as well go back to our old lives. And so that became a really important part also just of our brand values and our culture.
Time, something to end us with, and then I'll move on to Eileen. This is a great story and
Yeah,
something that's beautifully blue ocean. Please.
Yeah, I think I'll end it with one of the biggest changes or things that we figured out is how we define impact. We used to define impact completely as the emotional, like we're solving period poverty, and this is a very important like need for women, and all the traditional like impact definitions. And one of our investors actually had us meet with an impact investor to understand
An economic impact investor.
the whole holistic definition of impact. And once we realized that not only is this impacting women at an emotional level, as we always knew it would, it's impacting companies' bottom line with productivity and wellness and well-being and retention and brand perception and all of these things. And it's also affecting the bottom line of janitorial with their labor and their waste. And it's a more sustainable option. Like, so understanding impact as a holistic benefit to all of the customers that we're working with has changed everything because we truly came out of the gates in a very singular focused impact strategy, and it has changed everything when everybody wins.
I love it. Wonderful, 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 wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now, I'm going to go from rethinking the workplace with Max to rethinking how children learn with Eileen Rosenthal. Because Eileen is an extraordinary woman. She has a marvelous background, but she's now CEO and founder of Footsteps to Brilliance. It's an educational technology company revolutionizing early literacy and financial education. But I must tell you, those words don't capture what she's doing anyhow you can. Our Emmy-nominated program Learn With Me was developed in partnership with San Bernardino County Superintendent of Schools and PBS. And it shows us how creativity and compassion can make learning equitable and joyful for every child. But now I'm going to open the plate up for Eileen. Talk to us about Footsteps to Brilliance. What did you see? How did you hear? Because I really do think that these opportunities come to us if we just listen with an open mind and begin to think about it in a different way. Please, Eileen.
Thanks so much, Andy. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me here. Every time I talk to you, I'm always so amazed by the creativity with which you address any problems. So Blue Ocean Strategy is something I love to discuss. For us, I had been in education technology for about 20 years and had been helping a lot of students with reading, writing, and math. But it was always a small number. They'd go from one to another to another. And I read a research that said that nearly 50% of students in the United States of children are entering kindergarten at risk of failure. That was in 2012. And it actually shocked me. It shocked me because I didn't realize the richest country in the world could possibly be not taking care of our youngest learners, the future of our society. So I did what you have to do in Blue Ocean Strategy. I talked to superintendents, I talked to educators, and I said, what's going on here? And they said, the problem that we have is that we can address issues when children are within our jurisdiction, but the real time when the brain develops, 0 to 5, we don't really have control over those children, over their families. And so there's no resources that we can provide them. Anyway, based on that, my co-founder, Eugene Narciso, and I decided that we needed to do something really different. So we created what we called Model Innovation Cities. Now, the key with the Model Innovation City was that you could create a geofence, a digital fence around a community and provide everybody, even before they arrived at school, with the resources and services that they needed. This was a time when the cell phone was just becoming very popular. So we were able to eliminate the digital divide. And what we did is, it's as a social entrepreneurs, the school would pay for those students that were within their school, and we would grant them what they needed in the community in terms of the resources and services. And in that way, we were able to reach parents before they actually arrived at school and give them the step-by-step, fun, engaging, interactive resources that they needed, but also create a collective impact model where we could work with the Boys and Girls Clubs, the faith-based communities, to help reach those parents that needed a helping hand.
Now, that sounds huge, knowing education. My husband was in the education business. But somehow you overcame the resistance and began to develop something that has been transformative. And I know we want to talk about the financial literacy, but let's talk about your communities and what you discovered when kids can take control over their learning and the parents can work together with them in a multimedia fashion. Does that describe what you've done, sort of?
Describes it excellently. You know, the key to at least what we do is finding those A+ leaders, usually the superintendents, who really have a desire to fix a problem and are willing to be a leader in helping get their district there. So it really is a community effort. It's an effort, but leadership within districts are really important. And therefore, we've had tremendous success. What we're finding is that students who use Footsteps to Brilliance about 45 minutes a week end up tripling their scores, their literacy scores,
Wow.
standardized tests and otherwise. Yeah.
Talk about an unmet need not being served by another solution, transforming our future. Mhm. Big impact. And that became the foundation for another conversation with a superintendent who said something really quite scintillating for you, something that opened up the door to the next stage here. Tell us about that conversation and what's happened next.
Thank you so much. So I want to talk about Riverside County and the county superintendent there, who's over 23 school districts, is named Dr. Edwin Gomez. And he brought us in as a partner because he's very dedicated to his community. And he wanted to make sure that one of his pillar is literacy by 5th grade. And he brought us in as the partner. And I have to say, we had great success. We have great success. There's about 250,000 students who are learning to read using our system right now in his district. But he called me up after we had been with him for about a year and had really exceeded the expectations of what we would accomplish that first year, and said, "You've been a wonderful partner for literacy by 5th grade, but truthfully, there's something else that concerns me. Another pillar for me is financial literacy." And the reason is because he really believes that in addition to learning to read and developing those critical thinking skills, the next thing is understanding how finances work. Because if you don't understand that, frankly, many of his students were graduating with debt already because, you get these credit cards, you don't really know what to do. So he said, we have to start early with financial literacy. Would you create that program for us? So this was about 3 years ago. We've been working on it and we've just launched it. We've, of course, been piloting it in Riverside County. And what we found is that when we started, the median score of what students knew about personal financial literacy by the way, this is for 4th to 8th grade students, was actually 0, nothing. By the end of the pilot, their skill gain was about 76%. So they really were beginning to understand vocabulary and how you budget, how you invest, how you start your own businesses, what taxes mean, all the things that you have to understand. We see this as crucial when in high school, oftentimes students have to take a course that gives them some financial literacy, but it's, spreadsheets and budgets and that type of thing. If you don't have the vocabulary, if you haven't provided that to students in advance, it really isn't going to take. So that's part of it. But the other thing is that we recognize that engagement is important. So we have two things that really set us in a very unique way. First of all, we have a choose your own adventure game. So students can actually go on and read an interactive graphic novel. And based on the decisions they make, they may be working in a pet store, they may be working with difficult customers, they may be in a clubhouse where they decide that they want to buy something. We're letting them simulate all of that, and they get not only points for reliability, for effort, communication, all of those durable soft skills that are so important. but they also are earning money and learning how to decide what they're going to buy and how they're going to budget. So it's really exciting. We also have an AI coach. The AI coach helps them then understand what they're doing. We have them writing. Writing is a really important skill for all of these tests that we're taking. And what we're finding is that where teachers they'll stay up past midnight grading papers and putting brilliant comments on it. But the truth is that for most students, including my own children, if they handed the paper in on Monday and they got the revision, the comments back on Wednesday, they had already done the paper. They weren't going to revise. When you're with an AI coach, though, it's immediate. The coach immediately gives you feedback on what you wrote. And so we're finding that the students are actually rewriting about 2 different drafts, and then they can send it to their teachers, and their teachers can now have a really good draft that they can work from. So it's becoming something that's helping the students academically, but also developing their financial literacy and career readiness. That's so important.
I'm watching Max and I'm thinking about how to train the folks in the field for food safety. And does it have to be words or can it be a game? And gamification makes it more experiential learning. And Max, you don't have to respond, but you can respond. I saw you took you off mute. I thought, Max, to help Eileen think about it as you're thinking about it, and I'm thinking about it because of Blue Ocean.
Yeah, in the field, I'm reminded of the studies that were done probably a decade or so ago of the doctors in the emergency rooms. And
Hmm.
emergency rooms was the place for secondary infections. Most people who came into a hospital, um, a lot of them came out with a secondary infection. And the easiest solution was a 5 checklist where every doctor coming in had to check, have I washed my hands? Have I tied up my hair? So one can see that as an example of gamification, but also just the quick in the moment learnings are so impactful and certainly for adult learners. I haven't interacted with kids in a long, long time.
I'll go back to Eileen because as you're doing this, and thank you, Max, but I do think that the cross-fertilization of ideas is an essential part of blue ocean thinking. You don't get the ideas from being in your space. Eileen wasn't going out to teachers and say, how can we do better on this? She might have, but what she was looking was across. And that's where all the richness is. And there's an ability to take an idea from here, apply it to there, emphasize it and amplify it and come back again. And there's something really rich about that. Eileen, one of the questions you had is this Emmy Award nominated Learn With Me program blends storytelling, music, and play. But I'm really interested in how you understand learning isn't any single thing. It's multisensory, and there's sort of like a message for everybody here. It isn't unicorn isn't a one thing; it's many things. So help me help them think about how do we learn.
Sure. So I actually want to just give a little background there. So it's always looking at what's the problem and how can we fix it in a different way. And in this particular case, we were working with the county superintendent of San Bernardino, Dr. Ted Alejandre. And we have been partners with him since 2016. And during COVID, he said, we have a problem. And the problem is that many of our parts of our community, again, he's over 33 school districts, actually are internet deserts. They just don't have
Oof.
the internet they needed to do online learning. So how can we address that? And one of the things that we talked about is that there's many different media approaches. We call it transmedia that can reach people. And of course, television is one that everybody has. So within San Bernardino County, they have a wonderful PBS station called KVCR. And so Dr. Alejandre brought us together with KVCR and our content, which has a lot of books, songs, and games for students. Our content can be downloaded so that it doesn't have to be used on internet. When you hit internet, it can go up. So what happened is KVCR did a marvelous job creating animated stories using their real teachers around the books that we had written. And then the parents could go into a place where they could download the books. And with the books came comprehension and games and things that did it. And so they could develop an interactive library. They could see TV programs, download books, songs, and games, create an interactive library, which, by the way, is in English and in Spanish for their students. And therefore, we did something that was really engaging during COVID that got education to parents who needed it, where they could really be helping their students, their children.
I love it. Could I add one more question to this? Because we have a moment of time. And I have a wonderful client who handles a lot of children with special needs and autism. And as you and I were talking, you shared a story because I want the audience to understand that this isn't single purpose. This is broad and it has lots of applications when you go to think about how do we have children in all different ways who need a hand through a different approach. And I think that teachers need a hand in helping them, and so do the parents. Share that experience if you don't mind. I thought the case was wonderful.
Thank you so much. This is one of many examples that we have, but a lot of times if a parent has a child who has special needs, autism, or any of the other special needs that a child might have, they feel like they're flapping around. They don't really know where to go. And with Footsteps to Brilliance, we've created something that's multi-sensory, multimedia, where students can touch things and they'll hear the words, they can record themselves, they can see the words. And so the other day I had a mother who talked to me, I guess the other day is about 4 or 5 months ago. She had a beautiful daughter who hadn't been able to speak until she was 4, was about to go into 2nd grade, and literally only had never read a full sentence in a book, had some basic information in terms of one-to-one correspondence with letters, knew about a handful of words. And I had suggested that she try our program, which is called I Can Read, with her daughter. Well, the daughter ended up waking up each morning saying, "Can I try that, book game that we're doing?" And the wonderful news is, fast forward, this student is now in 2nd grade. She's just a phenomenal little girl. And we have videos of her reading trade books
Oh
to
my.
the class. What had happened is, by having the multisensory, by having something that was really set, by creating those routines and patterns, this student had just soared. It had, like, everything had come together for her. We've seen this happen before, and it thrills us, because what the mother said is that she hadn't really had one place to really progress on a step-by-step basis without necessarily being a teacher herself. She had, a lot of different people who were helping her daughter, but this just allowed her. So we always believe the school-home connection is crucial, always, for any educational success story. Parents are just an important part.
The most interesting part, though, it's not simply providing teachers with more schools and tools. And it isn't just simply educating parents on how to be teachers. It's really engaging the child through a methodology where they can take control. And with the constant feedback and experiential learning, they are transformed. And these are just wonderful stories. I do think we're about ready to wrap up, though, and I've been watching our time and watching the intention of our audience, who have really stayed engaged with us along the whole pathway here. So let me thank our panelists. It's been a marvelous blue ocean of opportunity. How do you rethink growth when times are changing? Well, paraphrase Peter Drucker, don't stick in the old, really rethink what's possible. You can compete, but really, why? Why not just create? You're so talented out there. There's so many big ideas. Stop saying, no, we don't. So I want to thank Max and Danielle and Thyme and Eileen for joining us today. Let me summarize a little bit about the messages that I heard, and you may have heard others. And remember, send along some questions and we'd be delighted to connect you. These are all illustrations of people who have seen, felt, and thought about things with new ways. And they've taken their observations and turned them into innovations. That's my tagline. You want to be an anthropologist, just go observe, listen differently. You don't need to have a doctorate. You need to have an open mind to see things through a fresh lens. It's a time for exploration. Um, don't fall into the trap of sticking to an old strategy. Michael Porter's, classic was fine when there was an abundance of more of the same, but now it's time for change. Rethink the problem. Try and let your mind wander to what is possible. Talk to people, talk to people, talk to people. The ideas are there, and listen to their stories. While I said talk to them, I really want you to listen. Ask them to tell you stories about the challenges they have and the opportunities that they have as well. We did that with Max, and we heard all kinds of things. I was the independent listener, but when we summarized it and did a thematic analysis, the recurring themes kept recurring. And Eileen has been speaking to superintendents who now turn to her for support. And Danielle and Thyme began to realize that it wasn't the woman wasn't the woman customer. It was everybody around him who influenced the system itself. So these are big opportunities. You don't need me. You just need an open mind to go and do it yourself. A couple of things to remember. Blue Ocean talks about creating a market, not competing. I can't say that often enough. The second thing is, how do you add value innovatively, not simply incrementally? You can. But what Max did is an absolute amazing innovation, taking the tools that are here and not simply putting it into chat, but creating a whole new agent in a whole new way with the kind of data that you can trust. Trust is important. As you're exploring, begin to think about how am I going to eliminate, reduce, raise, and create? You need to take action. And the processes that Renee Marbon and Chan Kim have given us are good processes. They help you refocus. I like focus, but what am I focusing on? And you need a process for eliminating things, which is the hardest part. Everybody wants to add, but not eliminate. You got to eliminate. And at the end of the day, as you begin to open up your mind to what's possible, try and find a good tagline that captures it. Unicorn in every stall really captures it. It opens up the door that you really can't imagine otherwise. But this is a time for us to be creators because that's what's going to be expected of us. The times require new ways of thinking. And don't worry about losing your job. It is an opportunity to create. Remember, Danielle and Thyme left their jobs and found something completely new. Thank you all for coming today. We're putting into the chat all about Blue Ocean strategy on frequently asked questions, and I'm always open for an hour conversation. I love to talk to people, and conversations are what we're all about. So thank you all, and I'm going to say goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. It's been marvelous. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.